Thank you again, everyone, for joining us for our second panel of the day, Responsible Mining, Resilient Communities, BC as a World Leader. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, we'll be using the Whova Q&A, so make sure you enter your questions and vote on the ones that you have answered. It is now my pleasure to introduce a brief video provided by MABC, the Mining Association of BC. Thank you, MABC. And now I would love to introduce this session's moderator, Michael Goehring, President and CEO of the Mining Association of BC.
Thank you, Sarah. And good morning, everybody. I'm Michael Goehring, President and CEO of the Mining Association of BC. I'm pleased to moderate today's panel. We are very fortunate to have a strong panel of experienced senior leaders from BC's mining sector, and I'm really looking forward to their remarks and our discussion. Before we begin, I would like to recognize that I'm speaking to you from the traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. I'll briefly introduce our panelists in presenting order today. First, we have Kelly Earle, Vice President of Communications for Skeena Resources. Ms. Earle is a geologist and responsible for communications and investor relations at Skeena. She's an expert in minerals, metals, and money. And that's a triple threat in our business. Welcome, Kelly. Our next panelist is Stephen Dean, Chairman and CEO of Artemis Gold. Many in the audience will know of Mr. Dean and his storied career. I look forward to hearing about his current project, the Blackwater Mine in central BC, and it's great to have you with us, Stephen. I'd like to welcome Jacques Perron, President and CEO of Pretium Resources. No stranger to taking on challenges, Mr. Perron accepted the CEO's position and joined Pretium last April in the middle of the pandemic. Hats off to you, Jacques. Very pleased you could join us today. Next is Brian Sullivan, CEO of Conuma Coal. A lawyer by training, Mr. Sullivan has been in the mining business for nearly 2 decades. He's worked around the globe and brings an important perspective to our conversation about the economic opportunity in BC. It's a pleasure to have you with us, Brian. Finally, I welcome Gil Clausen, President and CEO of Copper Mountain. A professional engineer, Mr. Clausen has served in senior leadership positions and as CEO at mining companies in North and South America. He brings a deep understanding of the business, and I look forward to his perspective on BC mining. Welcome, Gil. Each panelist will take 4 minutes to make their introductory remarks and share their perspectives with us. We'll then move into questions and discussion. And I'd like to remind the audience that they can participate through the Whova app, and I would encourage you to do so. Before I give the keys to Kelly Earle, allow me to set the stage for our discussion. First, COVID. The changes and challenges posed by the pandemic cannot be understated. It's been life-altering for all of us. I'm pleased to say our members took swift and extensive measures to prevent transmission and protect the health and safety of our employees and nearby communities while keeping British Columbians working. By every measure, we've been largely successful, but we remain vigilant. We've managed to continue to support over 35,000 direct and indirect jobs in every region of our province and maintain an important source of direct revenue for government, which reached $1.1 billion last year. Second, unfortunately, it's taken a pandemic to remind British Columbians that our industry is integral to BC's economy. At the same time, our sector can be an important driver of BC's economic recovery post-pandemic if we play our cards right. Ours is a responsible, low-carbon, export-oriented industry that offers British Columbians significant potential during a massive economic downturn. New mines like Skeena's or Artemis Gold's or the mine life extensions of our other panelists will grow the economy and keep people working from Vancouver to Vanderhoof. This at a time when we may be on the doorstep of a bull metals market. Another point, one that was emphasized at Roundup last week, is the global transition to a low-carbon future will require more minerals and metals, lots of them. BC has the minerals and metals necessary to build a low-carbon economy and help us meet our Paris goals. Additionally, our metals and minerals have one of the lowest carbon footprints in the world. This is a great opportunity for us economically and environmentally and socially in British Columbia. Fourth, in order to make the most of our opportunity ahead of us, we need to remain competitive, and that includes a regulatory system that promotes and facilitates our sector while maintaining our high environmental, social, and governance standards. We're pleased the province continues their work on the Regulatory Excellence Initiative to expedite and streamline permitting. It's absolutely critical. We're also very supportive of government's commitment to increase their capacity to better facilitate Indigenous engagement in the permitting process. BC's Indigenous nations are integral to BC's mining industry. I was very pleased to hear the Premier speak to this at Roundup last week. I'm sure a few of our panelists can provide their firsthand perspectives on a number of these points and others today. So with that, let me turn it over to our first speaker, Kelly Earle, Vice President of Communications for Skeena Resources.
Thank you, Michael. Before I discuss BC as a world leader in mining, I just wanted to give a bit of background on Skeena Resources. So Skeena is an exploration and development stage company. We're listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange, and we're looking to advance the past-producing Eskay Creek gold-silver mine, which is located in Tahltan Territory in the Golden Triangle of Northwest British Columbia. We released a preliminary economic assessment on Eskay Creek at the end of 2019, and we look to have a full feasibility study completed by the end of this year, at which point we'll launch project financing. So this is the second chapter of Eskay Creek, as it did produce previously from 1994 to 2008 as an underground operation, and it was the highest grade gold mine in the world when it was in production. We're looking to take a new approach to Eskay Creek this time round, as it will be an open pit operation and will also be run on green power, as there's a run-of-river hydro facility within 10 kilometers of the project. The second chapter of Eskay Creek will be an industry-leading example of environmental management and also community collaboration. So as Michael talked about, 2020 was a challenging year because of COVID. I'm very proud of our team and their efforts for zero harm at site and all the everything that was put in place to facilitate this. So we were still able to drill 90,000 meters up in the Golden Triangle this year, and we spent $55 million on exploration and development. We had over 250 team members at over 6 camps, and we are now over 500,000 person hours COVID-free. So this was largely due to our close working relationship with the Tahltan and their collaboration with our health and safety team. Tahltan have a very long history with Eskay Creek and will continue to contribute to its success as we advance the project towards production. Of the $55 million that we spent last year, $24 million of that went to Tahltan businesses and partnerships. So this leads me into why BC is strategically positioned to be a mining jurisdiction of choice. Mining companies in BC are strongly focused on ESG. We are leading the way in building a low carbon economy that uses green power. And we also have a government that takes reconciliation seriously and has worked to build strong relationships with Indigenous peoples. The mining industry is the single largest employer of Indigenous peoples in Canada and the birthplace of the Impact Benefits Agreement, which is now industry standard. And while all of this is attractive to investors, the final piece of the puzzle to make BC a mining jurisdiction of choice is an efficient and timely permitting regime. So to continue to bring investment into BC, permitting needs to be a key focus. As Premier Horgan stated in his speech at AME Roundup last week, $358 million was invested in mineral exploration in BC in 2020. And now we need to prove to those investors that BC is a world leader by building and permitting mines in a timely fashion. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you, Kelly. Stephen Dean, over to you.
Thanks, Michael, and thanks for the introduction. Artemis's Blackwater project is a $1.5 billion investment project, with the first $600 million of that investment as a first phase construction is scheduled to start in Q2 of 2022, which is some short 14 months away. Over $360 million and more than 9 years has been spent to date on progressing the science supporting Blackwater's economic viability, the EA approvals, numerous cooperation agreements and participation agreements signed with key First Nations, the LDN and UFN. The work has been done on this project, and it has BC and federal EA support and Indigenous nation support. It has an approved plan to manage environmental impacts and water management protocols based on world's best science. Now, I mention all this just to give people an insight into what is involved today in developing a new mine. And as I said, like, say, the pharmaceutical business or the technology business, there is a significant investment, in our case, over $360 million spent to date just to get us where we are today. And that's not even into a construction phase, let alone an operation phase. So investors are very mindful of that, and we need their support to continue on with our project. BC has earned a reputation for being sometimes challenging and slow jurisdiction, and a slow jurisdiction to permit a new mine, despite its wonderful history as a mining province, which makes it very difficult to finance the capital required for investment on top of that amount that I mentioned earlier, just to get us to where we are. And on top of that, the normal industry and cyclical challenges of securing such finance. But to the provincial government's credit, here in BC, that reputation is changing. The gold mining sector is cyclical. Windows for finance open and close, as all of us in the industry know, and they were largely closed from 2013 to 2019 in the gold sector. The improving perception of new mine approval with the government saying the right things, and the improved environment for sector investment provides an important window to build up a track record for further investment in the province. Blackwater will be the first large-scale gold mining investment in the province for some time. In these COVID times, the country and province needs new investment to get the economic engine restarted again, to create new jobs and pay taxes to repay increased levels of government debt. Blackwater will create 825 new direct jobs, 453 indirect, and 222 induced jobs, for a total of 1,499 jobs during construction, and during operations, 457 direct jobs, 698 indirect jobs, and 211 induced jobs, for a total of 1,366 jobs during operation phase. Importantly, all are where they are needed most, in the interior, where unemployment is high and new jobs are scarce. Blackwater is projected to pay $2.3 billion in provincial government revenues, which will help support government spending and its balance sheet, plus significant federal taxes. Last week, during the opening ceremonies of the Association of Mineral Exploration virtual roundup, Premier Horgan highlighted a group of companies, including Artemis, that are working to bring investment in mineral development to British Columbia. He indicated that the BC government would be focused like a laser on creating high-paying jobs, working with you and listening to you when it comes to your challenges. We are grateful for that support and the high priority that the provincial government has given us today. There may still be pockets of pushback from some stakeholders, as there typically can be. That will need to be dealt with respectfully and through process, but within agreed critical timelines. The rubber will hit the road on this in the timely process of our final permits this year. The clock has started, and the industry, along with its financing partners globally, will be watching us. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you, Stephen. I'm going to turn it over to Jacques Perron, but before I do, I'd just like to remind the audience, you can use your Whova app and send us questions for our Q&A. Thank you. Jacques, over to you.
Hey, thank you, Michael. Good morning, everyone. Nice to be with you, and thank you for the invitation to be part of the forum. Just to give a little bit of a context about Pretium. So we're 100% BC. We are one asset, the Bruce Jack mine, which is located about 65 kilometers north of Stewart by air. We have a warehouse and procurement office in Smithers, where I am today, and our head office is in Vancouver. We started commercial production in July 2017, and to date we have produced over 1.1 million ounces of gold. Significant level of production for a one mine. At Pretium, we value safety. That's core for us. Respect and teamwork. And we care about the environment, the employees, and where we operate. And all of this done with a lot of integrity. While most of the investment at Pretium were done during the construction period, we continue to invest in the future of the operation. So this year in 2021, we'll be investing about $55 to $65 million in infrastructures and about $23 million US in diamond drilling and talent development. And that gives you an idea of how a business like ours can continue to contribute to the growth and the development of the province. In terms of BC being a great mining jurisdiction, I think first and foremost, we have resources, which is great, lots of natural resources, but we also have people, we have skills. At Pretium, 87% of our employees come from BC, and we currently employ just over 1,100 employees. 47% of our employees come from Northwestern BC and 28% from First Nation communities. We have good schools with the UBC and BCIT mining departments. So we have what we need to make this industry very prolific. We have good infrastructure, and we're definitely blessed with the fact that we have a lot of hydropower in the province. So what can we do to improve and become even better? We believe at Pretium that we need to continue to work on the partnership between industry and government. And that my colleagues talked a lot about permitting and timeline, but we also need to work on after the permit. Once we are in operation or in construction, how can we work better together and make sure that responsiveness between the agencies, the various agencies, and the industry is always up to snuff. We need to continue to develop infrastructure, and mainly around power. Everybody's talking about climate change these days and greenhouse gases. And with electrification that is coming with that, power will be an important resource for the future of the business. And why are we doing all this? It's because the mining industry contributes a lot to the development of the province. We pay taxes, we pay salaries, direct employment, indirect employment. The mining sector as a whole is the largest Indigenous employer in BC, and we provide well-paying jobs. So if we work together, we can continue to improve how we do business in this province and make BC a great place, not a good place, but a great place to do mining. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Jacques. Now we're going to hear from Brian Sullivan of Conuma Coal. Brian?
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you, Michael, and thank you to my fellow presenters. And I'll echo some of the things that have already been mentioned about the importance of mining in British Columbia, but a bit about Conuma Resources. We're the second largest steelmaking coal producer in Canada. There's obviously out of a group of two, but we're still proud of our second place in the steelmaking coal sector in Western Canada. We've started Conuma in 2016, and since that time have hired 950 men and women in the North Peace region. And like some of my fellow presenters, the North Peace is somewhere that desperately needs economic investment in order to support the communities that have frequently been subjected to the boom and bust cycle that typifies commodities. And our job at Conuma, first and foremost, is to make sure that our company is sustainable enough to weather those boom and bust cycles for the benefit of our employees and stakeholders and owners, certainly. So that's our greatest challenge, is making certain that the 940 men and women and their families that work for Conuma have a long future ahead of them. And that's certainly something that the regulatory scheme is very much wrapped up in. I will give you some of the stats about Conuma that help illuminate some of our economic impact. Of the 940 total employees that we have, about 2/3 of those are hourly workers, and about a third of them are salaried. Our average hourly compensation annually is north of $80,000, and our salaried employees are just north of $100,000. So it gives you some idea that these are not simply minimum wage jobs. These are good paying jobs that do help grow the very necessary middle class and the businesses that spring up around a burgeoning local community. Our workforce is something that we're also proud of. A key initiative for Conuma this year is to drive diversity. We recognize that traditionally that's been a negative, a challenge for mining companies, and we want to make it a strength of ours. Of the 940 odd employees, about 2/3 are men, but we have a very large and growing percentage of women in our workforce. We have almost 300 women doing everything in the business, from truck driving to manning drills to every part of our quality program. And I think that really the sky is the limit in terms of our ability to attract populations that have been underrepresented traditionally in mining into our workforce. And by the way, our women truck drivers routinely take much better care of the equipment than do our similarly situated male counterparts. So if anybody knows any female truck drivers that want to live in the Northeast region, we are hiring. Our average total salary and bonus for the 4 years that we have been operating Conuma is just under $100 million annually. So the impact of that is obvious in our small communities in Tumbler Ridge and Chetwynd. Those communities have benefited countless ways from our bringing those jobs back, and we are just as benefited by the wonderful partnership that we have with those communities. There's a long list of things that we have asked of those communities, and we have gotten everything that we could have possibly imagined in terms of local support from Chetwynd and from Tumbler Ridge. To give you an idea of some of the other key facts, since we went back in business in 2016, the total number of vendors with which we've done business is almost 2,000 at this point, and 1,300 of those are Canadian, 975 are here in BC, and the total number of First Nations vendors is now approaching 20. And our annual spend with our First Nations partners, be they Soto, West Moberly, McLeod Lake, and Halfway River, is on order of $25 million annually. So again, we look forward to the remainder of the panel and discussing how our project, in particular at Herman, our life extension project, can add to those totals and continue to drive the economic benefit for our community. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Brian. Now I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Gil Clausen, President and CEO of Copper Mountain Mining. Gil.
Thanks, Michael, for the chance to speak about Copper Mountain. The mine's located close to the beautiful town of Princeton in the southern interior, within the traditional territories of both the upper and lower Similkameen Indian bands. It's been a foundation for the strong economic health of South Central BC for a long time, starting out as an underground mine in the 1930s, and in our current form today as a large open pit copper mine. We still have over a 30-year reserve life remaining with plenty of exploration upside. Copper Mountain does provide about 500 well-paying direct jobs to the local community and supports many local suppliers, of course, and businesses that create many other indirect jobs, contributing to around $250 million annually directly to the BC economy, and with normal indirect multipliers that exceeds $500 million per year in economic stimulus. And importantly, copper is a critical element in our transition to a global green energy economy. Wind turbines, electric vehicles, and energy distribution systems all rely on copper, and we expect demand will continue to grow, and our production is critical to the transformation from a carbon-based economy to clean electrification and greenhouse gas reduction. We're fully committed to this transition, and we strive leader in global responsible mining. So we've actually chosen to measure our progress towards this objective using the Canadian Mining Association of Canada's Towards Sustainable Mining, or TSM standard. It's a global leading standard, which will continue to evolve with the changing world. It demands a solid, independent, third-party auditable metrics. We started the process last year and have achieved AA rating on tailings management and safety and health, and AAA rating actually on Aboriginal and community outreach. Targeting a minimum audited A rating on the remaining protocols by the end of this year. One of the TSM protocols is energy use and greenhouse gas management. Copper Mountain was recently recognized by Natural Resources Canada for energy conservation and corporate energy management leadership. We're focusing on reducing our GHG emissions with a bold plan to be carbon neutral by 2035. We've defined several tangible actions to reduce GHG intensity to be in the lowest GHG emitting open pit copper mines in the world in that group before 2030. And the first step that we have in this plan is to install phase one of our electric trolley assist project this year to reduce diesel emissions from our open pit truck haulage fleet. We're working closely with the BC Ministry of Environment and Climate Change, BC Hydro, Komatsu, SMS, and ABB to demonstrate and prove out this technology. Mining haul trucks, as we all know, burn diesel, and it's the biggest source of GHGs in our industry, and our ability to switch that to clean energy, hydro-generated electricity will significantly reduce our GHG emissions. So BC's clean hydroelectric power is a key to BC's GHG reduction plan, and we want to acknowledge and appreciate both the federal and BC government's investment in BC Hydro's distribution infrastructure upgrade projects. Those efforts will clearly support greater clean power distribution capacity within the province. A few of our stated carbon reduction steps require permit amendments, as many others have talked about, in order to achieve these reductions. BC permitting sets and achieves a very high standard, and we need that high standard so that we can assure public confidence in our industry, but the permitting process also needs to be timely. And the regulatory efficiency review process, as Michael mentioned, undertaken by the BC Ministry of Energy, Mines and Low Carbon Innovation, is critical to supporting this objective. So, part of achieving our target of carbon neutrality by 2035, we have to prove out existing technologies, and we have to work with partners to be innovative, develop and advance new technologies. We do have a culture in our industry of science and engineering and testing and advancing technologies, and we look forward to working with other companies that work towards that objective. Also, I'm going to talk really quickly on reclamation, and reclamation of land is part of these goals. We have a very progressive reclamation agreement with the City of Vancouver, Aero Transportation, and the Upper Similkameen Indian Band to use waste Class A biosolids from Vancouver to mix with our reclamation soil to produce a fantastic soil growth medium. We place about a half meter of thick cover of this soil mix on our recontoured broken rock landforms, seeded with grasses and plantings curated by our Indigenous. And we started this program in 2018, and it's been very, very successful, and we're scaling it up to 25 hectares a year. All this is part of working closely with our First Nation partners, the Upper and Lower Similkameen bands, to fully designed end land use plans for the mine. So to wrap up, at Copper Mountain, we produce a much needed commodity in copper, It's critical to the transition to a global green energy economy, and we try to do it the right way and economically, with our life of mine costs in the lowest quartile of producers worldwide. So in short, we plan to be a long-term, critically important economic driver to BC, and we want to work with the province and regulators to be at the forefront of moving our industry forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Gil. And thank you, panelists. For those in the audience, we're now going to move into question and answer period for the next 25 minutes or so. And then each panelist is going to take a minute and sum things up for us from their perspectives. I hope that folks in the audience, either at home or in the in your office, are getting a sense that mining as an industry is an exciting place to be right now, and that mining as an industry is starting to be viewed as a sorry, there's a background noise there. Mining as an industry is being viewed as a solution, and we're it's always the commodities we produce, whether it's met coal that is critical to produce steel, which everybody needs in everyday life, or copper for wiring, etc. We all know those basic kind of utilitarian needs of our commodities. But as folks have talked about, whether it was Robert Friedland last week, Ivan Glassenberg of Glencore just a few months ago, our commodities are now being recognized as a critical piece of the transition to a low carbon future. In fact, the World Bank came out just this last fall and said, the more that we turn towards a low carbon future and trying to meet our Paris Agreement objectives, the more metals and minerals we'll need. And in British Columbia, we have those minerals and metals. So there's that. There's the work that we're doing with our Indigenous partners. There's our ESG performance that we're always trying to improve. There's lots going on in our industry. It's an exciting time. And we're also kind of at a place where it looks like right now, at the beginning of the pandemic, prices dropped into the tank, and now they've started to come back, and now they're starting to rise, and everyone has their fingers crossed. That's very important for all of us, obviously. But there's lots to be said about the upward trajectory of our industry, and I think kind of a zeitgeist, if I can use the word in the industry, is things are looking very positive. There's always work to be done. So on that, two things I want to put out to the panel. First, COVID and carbon. And I'd like to put it out. I've got questions for everybody. We've got questions on the Whova app. But a question I want to know from all of you, and two of you are in kind of development stage, three of you are operating mines. What has been the impact of COVID on your operations, your development? And what, as leaders, as CEOs, what have you learned from COVID? Any takers? Brian, thank you.
Yeah, it's been very interesting, Michael. When we started to see this become an object looming on our horizon in March, we were very concerned about the potential impacts of COVID community spread in a small tertiary market like Tumbler Ridge or Chetwynd, where we don't have an abundance of rural healthcare. It was really amazing how our employees stepped up to the challenge of really creating a new operating environment almost overnight in terms of taking care of each other, making sure they were well, looking after their fellow employees. And we almost overnight stood up new prophylaxis and sanitation and just self-awareness and situational awareness. And I'm interested to hear whether others who have employee bases had the same experience. Our injury and incident rate went down. Now, those can go down for a lot of reasons, but for me, I think one of the things the lessons we may learn looking back is it caused a whole discipline to be added to our loss prevention culture, but it focused attention on people's availability and how you keep yourself well and safe. And so I think our loss prevention behavior actually improved as a direct result of people just being more aware of their own health and the health of their fellow employees. So we were, mining was, and I credit the industry associations and the regulators for deeming mining an essential business. But we actually, in our experience, had a improvement in loss prevention behavior. And it was because we started talking about it even more than we did before. We start every meeting with some knowledge base or knowledge add on the current state of COVID, how you keep yourself well, how you keep yourself available, and how you keep your family safe as well. So we had that's one of the, I think, benefits that we had come out of the silver lining we had to a dark cloud of 2020 was our loss prevention behavior, I think, improved off a very good standard already.
Thank you, Brian. I know what you say really is indicative of the strong health and safety culture in mining and being the safest heavy industry in Canada. Gil, did you want to add something?
Yeah, just briefly, I would certainly echo what was. I think it's incumbent on people who do operate in small communities and relatively confined areas like that to be extremely or overly aware and overly cautious of the potential for spread with respect to COVID. And I think we've responded pretty well as an industry and certainly as a company at Copper Mountain to try and move beyond the provincial guidelines and everything else to enact new workplace rules and regulations to make sure that we have employees effectively social distancing and isolating and the hygiene and everything else that is required. And I think that mobilization occurred very, very quickly. And it's important that you work closely with your communities in terms of managing potential impacts and being prepared. And I think that's one aspect. The one that wasn't really mentioned, I think I want to talk about is also supporting local businesses and supporting your communities, especially during these times when small businesses are under a tremendous amount of stress. We've tried very hard to support local restaurants and other businesses, provide our employees with extra money that could be spent within the community and help to support what is the life and blood of our industry, and that's our local communities.
Thank you, Gil. Let's move on to carbon. A close second to on the minds of British Columbians following COVID and safety is climate change and carbon and decarbonization. And I mentioned earlier that studies have been done between BC Business Council and the Government of BC and third-party auditors where they did assess our copper, steelmaking, coal, and aluminum. And BC's commodities in that regard have among the lowest GHG emissions in the world. So that is beneficial. But also there's significant demand. I'm wondering, some have put forward forecasts that, for example, copper, demand for copper is going to rise an incredible amount by millions of tons in addition to normal consumption. Would one of you like to comment on that and where you think that's going to go and how fast?
So I'll jump in if no one else has anything to say. Sure. Skeena is looking at a gold and silver mine, but we do have our eye on copper project for the future. And you're right. Our view is that copper will take off. It might not be next year, might not be the year after that, but I think within 5 years we could easily see $6 copper. In BC, we've already started to see copper mining companies come in. Newcrest came in. They bought a very large land package from Skeena, in addition to the Red Chris mine. So we already see globally companies starting to come into BC and look at copper projects. There's the key factor though is really going to be the price of copper. I think where we are right now, it's there's a lot of projects that are marginally economic, unfortunately, in BC right now with current copper prices. But we could really see that change overnight and wake up a few years from now and have $6 copper. And you mentioned also about the low footprint GHG emissions in BC, and that's a huge testament to the hydroelectric facilities that have been built and the government has put into place. Eskay Creek is 10 kilometers from a hydroelectric facility. It was run completely on diesel power historically, so a vast improvement now that we have access to hydroelectric power, and I think that's similar for all companies here. So yeah, hydropower is key, and I truly believe we'll wake up in a few years from now and see $6 copper, and copper mining in British Columbia will be very strong and will continue to show as a world leader in terms of low carbon emissions.
Thanks, Kelly. Well, $6 copper would obviously be stupendous. I can see Gil is like, that would be very nice.
One other comment. I would comment that the outlook for copper is more about supply than demand. Demand is something that is difficult to quantify, and we're going through technological change. But supply is key, and we know more about supply, and we know that, as Kelly just touched on, current prices do not support significant increases in supply. So I see the potential for a supply-driven or supply-constrained price regime going forward.
Very good. Which will then in turn incent new mines.
You guys are tired of listening to me talk about GHGs and GHG reduction, and copper, but I think I want to touch on both Kelly and Stephen's comments. Fundamentally, I believe that we are in one of these once in a century economic changes, and that's fundamentally driven by the ultimate death of our carbon-based economy, which is a mature economy now, and the transition to a green energy economy. And that's going to drive a lot of new investment in infrastructure. And we've got to find a way to get the energy distribution users, and that's in automobiles, that's in trucks, that's in everything else, as well as the creation of energy, if not through hydropower, through wind turbines and new energy technologies, but also importantly to look at ways in which we can more effectively store energy for this transition. So, and that's going to be in the form likely, especially in our province in British Columbia, where we have such abundance of cheap electrical power, how we can maybe convert that to hydrogen energy to store that energy and be able to reutilize that energy when there are peak demand, et cetera, or export it. So those kinds of things, and all those things, that economy is driven by moving energy from place to place, and that's copper, and you need copper to do that. So I would suggest that copper demand is growing rapidly, and we're going to see copper demand. But to the point made, also supply is constrained, and we actually need higher copper prices in order to be able to develop new resources, just to be able to try and keep up with it. And as most of the panelists here know, that major copper projects sometimes take 10, certainly through 15 years to be able to move a project through and into production. So we're going to see a gap between supply and demand. I think that's going to be quite significant and strategic for both the province and the country. And we need to make sure that we're supportive of these industries so that we can maintain a supply of these commodities in the future.
Thank you, Gil, and I would agree. I think we are at a kind of a once in a lifetime pivot point in our industry and in the global economy, no question. I want to put a question now to Jacques. And Jacques, I know in our discussions, you've enjoyed a long career in mining, and you've worked, starting back in Quebec many years ago. But part of the theme of this panel is responsible mining. What does responsible mining mean to you, and how does it manifest at your operations at Bruce Jack?
Yeah, Michael. I've been in the mining business even before I was born, because my dad was in the mining business and my grandfather was in the mining business, and I've seen this industry evolve quite a bit over the last 60, 70 years. We've made fantastic progress, and responsible mining, at the end of the day, for me, it means that we care. We care about what we do. It's responsible mining is mining that involves and respects all stakeholders. For many years, we heard the word shareholders, but I think everybody would agree today that the focus is on employees, communities, contractors, governments, and shareholders. But responsible mining is making sure that we consider everybody, and that we look at all possible ways to minimize our impact of our activities, and make sure that we contribute to the economic and financial development of where we operate. And for us at Pretium, we operate in a very unique and sensitive environment in a beautiful part of the country. We're pleased, and we spend quite a bit of time making sure that we maintain the great relationship we have with the First Nation communities where we operate. We're very, very proud of the work we're doing and how we respect the environment. And for those who are not aware, the last 10 kilometers of our access road to a mine goes over a glacier, which require a lot of care and attention, and we're very proud of the work we do, and we always try to improve. And when we talk about greenhouse gases, our operation produces about 10 times less greenhouse gases than the average of the intermediate gold producers. So we're at 0.05 ton of CO2 equivalent per ounce of gold, and we're very fortunate to have an underground operation. We're a very small footprint. As Gil mentioned, we don't have a huge fleet of big open pit trucks. We're underground. We're a much lower footprint. But even if we're doing well on that front, we continue to strive to do better. And for example, right now we're testing battery electric haul trucks to replace our diesel haul trucks that we have on the ground. And I think that's responsible mining is making sure that, even if you're good, that you're not satisfied with that you strive to do better. You want to move from good to great. And that's what we're trying to achieve, and we're working hard, and our team is working hard. And responsible mining is all about caring. And I've seen the industry change over the last years, and I think as Canadians and as people operating in British Columbia, we can be proud of what we've done, but there's still a lot of work to do, and we just need to continue to be diligent about it.
Thank you, Jacques, very much for that. Just keeping an eye on our time, we've got time for a few more questions. A quick question to Kelly. You mentioned your work with the Tahltan. Could you just briefly tell us how is the declaration BC has brought in UNDRIP? How has the declaration affected your relationship with the Tahltan?
So I don't think it's really affected or changed our relationship with the Tahltan. I mean, Skeena has always made respect for Indigenous title and rights a cornerstone of how we do business. Regardless of the declaration, we would have communications, explorations, opportunity sharing agreements. We started a Tahltan mentorship program recently and have 5 recent graduates and students in environmental sciences and engineering working for us. One of whom, Kyle, is actually manning our booth for this conference if you want to go say hi to him. So, we're in constant contact with Tahltan as we advance Eskay Creek, and we do this because it's the right thing to do, not because of a UN declaration. That being said, I do think it has affected the industry as a whole, and especially our relationship with investors. Investors are becoming a lot more aware of the importance of relationships with Indigenous peoples and ESG as a whole. And as Skeena has traveled the world, promoting, bringing money in for an investment to our project and to BC as a whole, we've traveled with our Tall Tam partners and brought them into meetings with fund managers and such. And it's really exciting for me to see fund managers take an interest and ask them questions. And that's definitely because of the declaration. So it's really reinforced that Skeena is on the right side of history and the right side of creating certainty for our investors.
Thanks, Kelly. A question for Stephen. Stephen, what is the most, you're developing Blackwater, what's the most challenging aspect of developing this project?
Difficult to say that there's one thing, because as you know, Michael, and most of the people listening understand and appreciate that mining is a challenging, can be a challenging business. It requires a lot of capital, requires a lot of coordination of various interests. One of the challenges, as some of the other panelists have mentioned, is that we need, as an industry, greater predictability of permitting, for example, that will allow us to give greater certainty to our investors and backers to bring the capital required to deliver on a project. The other aspect would be execution, balancing the budget and schedule during construction is always a challenge. But perhaps the greatest focus and effort is around, and once again, this has been touched on by the panelists, is around taking care of the various stakeholders that we recognize today in today's mining business. And it's not just about the shareholders, it's not just about the lenders, but it's about our people, it's about our Indigenous nations partners, it's about the communities in which we work. It's balancing and taking care of all of those interests and coordinating those as we move towards our collective goal.
Thank you. So it's, as they say, mining is no longer your grandfather's industry.
100%.
Right?
Jacques' grandfather's industry.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got 2 minutes left before we go to closing. I want to try and see if I can fire off 2 questions, one to Gil and one to Brian. So I'm looking for concise answers here. Gil, you've mentioned you've adopted TSM. It's that growing global standard for responsible mining. How has that changed how you operate at Copper Mountain?
Michael, I don't think it's really changed how we operate, but what it's done is it's, with the protocols defined and auditable, it's made us be a lot better in terms of documentation of what we do and how we do it. And I think that's really important because when you start to really document your systems and how you operate and how you're managing that whole those whole elements of sustainability, you're setting the stage for continuity, and you've got those learned behaviors in place, and you've institutionalized your practices. We all talk about doing the right thing, and we're all obviously wanting to do so, but it's also very good practice to be able to measure, record, document, and evolve procedures, policies, and practices.
Excellent. Thank you, Gil. Brian, last question for you. At Conuma Coal, you operate Willow Creek, Brule, Wolverine. Under the auspices of economic recovery, you've got a planned extension, or new pit, Herman. You're in the EA process on that. What does that new mine mean to Conuma and the local economy?
Well, it means a great deal, to put it concisely. And if I've got 14 seconds, I probably can't state all of the ways that it is important to us. But it provides 10 years of certainty for the 300 plus people that are working there, and allows them to have the security that Conuma is a player that will last through the commodity cycle, the brutality of the commodity cycles that we've all endured. Having that certainty that we do have a place to go for the men and women who have worked hard for us at Wolverine is quite simply everything to us. It's our lifeblood, it's our future, and being able to point to a goal like that and show concrete steps of advancement, as everybody has said, whether they are regulatory steps or planning or execution steps, it really keeps your workforce motivated and lets them know that they have signed up to work in the right place, and we owe them at least that.
Thank you, Brian. So it's critical to hundreds of families up in Northeast BC, no doubt.
Absolutely.
Okay, now we're going to, we've got 5 minutes left. Question for our panelists. And to those who sent in questions on Whova, thank you very much. I've tried to kind of mimic some of the questions that were sent in. And this goes to a question that I see on the bottom of the Whova. I'm going to put it in a different way. To each panelist, why does BC have great potential as a mining jurisdiction? And what do you think we need to do to ensure we continue to fulfill that potential? Can we start with you, Kelly?
Sure. So I've already mentioned, I think BC is a great mining jurisdiction. I'm a geologist, so I'm always going to talk geology first. We've got world-class geology, spectacularly high-grade deposits, a vast number of resources. In addition to that, we've got strong First Nations support, a supportive government, and we lead the way on ESG and a low-carbon future. So to ensure we remain a world leader, mines need to be permitted in a timely fashion. The generic permitting timeline for Eskay Creek would be 4 to 5 years from now, and we just don't think that's acceptable. It's a past-producing mine, existing permits, licenses. It's had continuous monitoring for 2 decades. It has strong First Nation support and participation, an access road, green power next door. If we can't bring a project like Eskay back into production quickly, then what are we doing? Commodities are cyclical. Gold could be out of favor in 5 years from now if that's the time that it takes. So permitting is absolutely key to make sure that we remain a world-class mining jurisdiction.
Hear, hear. No argument from us. Stephen.
Kelly did such a great job. It's hard to add to that, but mineral endowment, the fact that we've got renewable energy to support the industry, because this industry is a big consumer of energy. I would add a wonderful history of this business, and as a result, a very skilled work base from trades all the way through to senior executives in the business. So all of those resources coming together, and I'm sure others, that make this a very special place to build a mining business and operate a mining business.
Thank you, Stephen. Jacques.
Yeah, Michael, I echo what Kelly and Stephen have said, and I think all the ingredients are there. It's just a matter of working together, all partners, and happy to see that the MABC is working with the government on a regulatory excellence initiative. But again, as I said earlier, it's also important to consider when we go into operation how we can have a responsive and reasonable timelines to approve improvements and new project. And at the end of the day, Michael, it's if we all work together, there's no reason why we should shoot for the silver medal. We should shoot for the gold medal and make BC the best possible place to do mining.
Thank you, Jacques. Let's put the medal in the medal. Brian.
Yeah, you mentioned, I think I've worked in mining on 5 continents, and BC should not feel the slightest bit like it's in second place in any regard. So we do have the quality of the deposits is first and foremost. The quality of the people is right there with it. So we have the combination of the quality that the world needs, especially in our industry, steelmaking coal. Canada's steelmaking coal deposits are absolutely critical to the continued development of Asia. And remarkably, even though coal is in our name, we don't use coal as for power generation, and we do have our work cut out for us to be part of a low carbon future, but we are going to take steps to get there. The steps that I think that the things that could hold us back as BC is drawing the young people into the industry that keep it moving forward and keep that energy and enthusiasm. And I think you used the word zeitgeist, so I'll try to use that again. We need engineers. We need to make sure that the pipeline of talented people, young women, young men, across the entire spectrum, are drawn into this industry, and the way we make it stronger is broaden the appeal to beyond the traditional places that we've looked to get employees.
Thank you, Brian. Good point on the skills, definitely. Last but not least, Mr. Clausen.
Hey, look, and I'm going to try and keep it short and not repeat all the excellent comments that were made before me. They're certainly true, but I think one of the things the province needs to think about with this endowment is to start to really prioritize infrastructure investment, in the interior of the province, so we can continue to develop the abundance of natural resources that we have. And we really need to make a focus of sitting down and working with our First Nations partners here to really, and the provincial government, to come to some sort of understanding how we are going to make the principles of UNDRIP work within the province and be able to can develop these resources for the benefit of all.
Excellent, thank you, Gil. And there does need to be kind of continuing communication and clarity around UNDRIP and the declaration. I think all of us in the mining industry, we want that to be successful. We're advancing economic reconciliation, but the uncertainty is a vulnerability, and that needs to be reconciled for sure. Thank you, all of you. Great work. It's a thrill for me to moderate this panel and talk about mining anytime. You've been very insightful, and I hope, and I'm sure the audience will agree. Heard a lot today that BC is a leader when it comes to mining, a low carbon leader. Responsible mining happens. We've got a resilient industry, resilient communities, resilient employees. People have really stepped up during COVID to ensure that folks continue working, people that keep mining communities moving and working and sustained. That's critical. And there's lots of, we're always trying to improve, but we've got a great future in British Columbia and BC mining. And we're all doing our best to contribute to that. And I think a lot of people, a lot of British Columbians probably don't understand, I think Jacques used the word care, that there's thousands of people every day in our industry that care about what they're doing and are trying to do better. I just want to thank you again for joining us. I'd also want to thank Sarah Weber at C3 Alliance. And I just want to give a quick shout out to Mining for Miracles. That's BC Mining Community's long-standing fundraising campaign in support of BC Children's Hospital Foundation. Drop by their booth on the Whova app. They're on the exhibitors page, and have a chat with them. And thank you to everybody in the audience. Stay safe and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael and panelists. We appreciated hearing BC's strategic position as a mining jurisdiction of choice. We would also like to highlight a fantastic initiative, Mining for Miracles, which is BC Mining Community's long-standing fundraising campaign in support of the BC Children's Hospital Foundation. To learn more about this initiative, we'll leave you today with this video and encourage you to reach out through their virtual exhibitor booth. Next in the schedule, we are moving into our networking break, sponsored by the Construction Labour Relations Association of BC from 12:30 to 2 p.m. We invite you to meet up and touch base with other forum delegates through the Attendees and the Communities tabs on the homepage. And please don't forget to check out our virtual exhibitors. There's some amazing content to view. And additionally, we're pleased to invite you to continue the conversation with the participating speakers from the mining panel in our post-panel breakout room. You can access this by visiting the subsession connected to the panel in your agenda. Thank you everyone for joining us this morning, and we'll see you back online at 2 o'clock for a keynote address from Afonso Bizon, General Manager at Rio Tinto BC Works.
Thank you for this opportunity to share with you a little bit about Mining for Miracles. Mining for Miracles is BC mining industry's charity of choice supporting BC Children's Hospital. Every year since 1988, regardless of market conditions, thousands of people from across our sector dig into their wallets to donate and support children in British Columbia and the Yukon. Today, after 33 years of activity through Mining for Miracles, the industry has raised over $33 million in support of children's health. As a result of that, there are thousands of people now living in every corner of our province who are healthier and in some cases alive because of the work of our industry. BC Children's is the only hospital in the province devoted exclusively to the care of children. This means 1 million kids, including some of the sickest and most seriously injured, count on the hospital for specialized care they often can't receive anywhere else. Last year, more than 96,000 patients visited the hospital, which not only includes the acute care center, but also the research institute, the mental health facility, and the rehabilitation center.
A year ago at last year's Natural Resources Forum, Mining for Miracles announced its current funding commitment to raise $3.385 million to establish the BC Children's Hospital Cellular and Regenerative Medicine Centre, or CRMC for short. The first of its kind in Western Canada, CRMC will give clinicians at BC Children's the tools to better understand the genetic cause of heart arrhythmias so that they can provide the best possible care to children in BC. It will result in improved diagnoses, identification of optimal treatments, and potentially cures, improving this and saving the lives of children across the province and beyond. In the future, it is hoped that the CRMC will be able to expand its reach to improve care for kids living with other conditions, such as diabetes, cancer, bowel disease, and epilepsy. One of the biggest ways you can support Mining for Miracles is by making a financial donation to our fundraising campaign, either through an individual or corporate general donation or by sponsoring a pie at our annual pie throw event, which will be taking place this May, and it will be our first ever virtual pie throw event. Mining for Miracles will be taking a pause in our annual Diamond Draw raffle this year. We hope to bring back the Diamond Draw next year, and at this time we'd like to thank our Diamond Draw sponsors, C3 Alliance Corp, Tech, and Andrew Clausen of Clausen Capelou Goldsmiths and Design for their generous support over the past many years. We hope you'll consider supporting this important initiative for BC kids. Thank you.